Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me. Religion. Religion is my topic, but I'm not sure what about it. So religions are an interesting matrix of sheep and shepherd. Although sometimes it's not shepherd, sometimes it's more like, dictator. But not always. I think very often there is a humility to the leadership of religions. You could say that religions emerge because the people need a larger story. And someone emerges who can begin the process of evolving such a story. And then you have sheepish shepherds for a while who do not innovate, but then you get another highly intuitive or otherwise really smart a person who is attuned to the right ways of thinking, who has skills in those correct ways of thinking, and they develop the story even more. They formulate more clarity to it, they build upon it, or they reinvent the whole thing. But it's an evolutionary process, but it is one that generally only changes when it has to. It's very change resistant. And that's because you don't change the thing that's saving you, right? Not unless there's something really going wrong, which is when it evolves. The Christian Bible, in concert with the Jewish Bible, I think has some very, very interesting, you kind of have to read between the lines, but really interesting things to say about this process. Even though I believe that the Bible is somehow true enough that I trust in the God it portrays in a literal sense. Although I acknowledge that it might all be, and I do that not because I think the scientific evidence and the historic evidence proving the Bible is overwhelming. I don't think it's underwhelming, but I don't think it's overwhelming. I think it is open-ended. And so this is not a conclusion that is certain. This is a faith. And I think it was a huge mistake for the church to ever try to have certainty instead of trust in God, because, and maybe this is the point of my topic, certainty evolves into a type of dictatorship. Certainty creates structures of power within a religion, whereas faith in a God leaves things more open. You don't get the random, how do I say this? When certainty is involved, you have a hierarchy, and those who lead are picked from the hierarchy. When faith is involved, mere trust in God, not trust in the religious structure. Over and over again in the Bible, the religious structure collapses. God himself breaks the religious structure over and over again. And it's like, nope, you're not doing it right. Crush the temple. No, you're not doing it right. Scatter to 1,000 different countries for 40 to 70 years. No, you're not doing it right. Etc., etc. You could even say that in the when Joseph went to Egypt, and birthed a nation there, that the story was not cohesive enough to keep those people. Well, no, they were definitely a people group, but they were an enslaved group, right? Which, it's an interesting question. Why would God allow his people to be enslaved? And I think the answer is they were already enslaved, even though they had the rudiments, the beginning of a relationship with God and the beginning of a people group. They were enslaved because they didn't have, it's something that always happens, right? You either become enslaved to your own identity. Well, you always become enslaved to your own identity. And if you're not enslaved to the identity of God, which is the ultimate, it's the highest principles that humans can live up to. That's what God is in some way. An embodiment of that, an interaction of that with mankind. Whether that's on an unconscious level, whether that's software running in our wetware, or if that's a real power in the world, in the universe, in existence. And maybe that's the same thing. Maybe in some ways that's the same thing. Maybe that's how he shows up, is through us. But anyway, that's all speculation. I trust in God, and I believe he's real because I see his effects in my life, and that's enough. It's more than enough, in fact, to honor, to be worthy of my trust. Are there things the church does that are wrong? Absolutely. This is the topic, right? This is what happens when religion stops trusting in the God or gods that it, and I hate to say gods, but I'm trying to be open here, in the God or gods that it professes, and begins trusting in the philosophical structure, in the conceptual structure, in the social structure, I think is a better way to put it. When that happens, they become obsessed with their own identity instead of the process of moving towards God closer and closer. And then it becomes stagnant, and then it becomes calcified, and whatever can be corrupted in the system gets corrupted. So if there's any way for the power structure to be corrupted, it will be. If there's any way for the ego of those people to be corrupted, it will be. If there's any way for the regulations, the laws, to begin abusing people on any level, on the poorest level to the richest level, it will happen. That's what happens when it is the power structure that is worshipped instead of the God. So that's where religion goes bad. Now, how do you quantify or diagnose that? How do you diagnose that? And that's very hard, because you can have 10 people who are basically worshiping the power structure and 10 people who are basically seeking God. Although the latter I've found, I hate to say this, but honestly I find it happens less. I've got 3 minutes. Let me go over this idea one more time of the calcification, of the corruption, of worshiping the structure instead of the God. Because it's never true that anybody's only worshiping the structure, not unless they're like kind of hypocritically or ironically. What is the phrase? I guess that's close enough. Unless they know it's a farce, but they're doing it because they want to use the power. And I don't know how often that happens because you can't see in people's hearts. But I'm sure it does happen. At any rate, it's unbelievable that it can't happen, because you have to so quarantine your knowledge that it is a farce behind layers of, but this is helping people. I can see that I'm helping people. But they're not connecting with God, right? They're not using. In fact, some whole denominations basically cut off the entire possibility that God can interact with the people. That's really scary to me. That's frightening to me. Man. Okay, so what does it look like? I think it looks like the social structure dictates the lenses through which you see God. And if you cannot see God outside of those lenses, it's got you. It's manifested itself as a shape of God that you will then not let go of because it's God, right? You know, if you're no, I don't want to name any denominations. I don't want to do that. But just pick one. Pick a fundamentalist or conservative, very reluctant to change denomination, and you will see one that obeys the power structure, obeys the social structure, the symbolism, the laws, the orders, the unwritten laws, right? There are unwritten laws to certain denominations that you will find very quickly if you go in, and you'll find, and sometimes they're very localized, but you go in and you find that there are some things people in that group just do not do or do not say or they don't think and process in that way. So they've found their home, if you will, their society, and they've locked into it. And there's no openness anymore. And to a certain degree, that's just human nature. But I think part of the point of religion ought to be to continue to pull us out of those cycles of being completely locked in to our way of thinking and to our people. Christianity's birth was about spreading and spreading and spreading and upgrading and upgrading and upgrading. You see a little bit of calcification with certain New Testament books, letters, but I don't think it was intended as a calcification, but as a clarification. Not that a clarification can't become a calcification, but I think, well, you could see it in the letter itself that things were falling apart, things were going sour, and so it had to pull in. And that's not worshiping the system. That is a person contacting God, seeing the thing, and changing things. And again, God can be a symbolic structure in your brain. That's fine. Or it could be an actual God that communicates and fills you. And the psychotechnology of knowing, this is the power of the Holy Spirit, knowing, the psychotechnology of knowing God is in you opens up all kinds of connections with God. Rather than only the chosen ones, I'm not chosen. No, we're all chosen. We're all anointed. Therefore, any of us can hear from God. And that, so long as we hold to that idea, then Christianity doesn't calcify, in my opinion. When we stop believing that the Holy Spirit is in us, active, changing us, and changing our group, then we calcify. All right, I got to get into work. Bye. Thank you.